This might be the most toxic grandmother we've ever come across, and that is no exaggeration, guys. I present to you the Nightmare Grandmother. I'm 19 and female, and I'll be celebrating my 20th birthday in 2 months. And although I do not expect a big party or massive celebration, I thought I would spend the day with family. What I did not expect was that my grandmother would plan a huge family holiday, leaving on my birthday but not inviting me. I'm still trying to process what's happened, so bear with me. Really, I just want to have a major rant, so it's not all stuck in my head driving me crazy. Unlike my grandmother, who's bat crap crazy and, well, racist. Let's start at the beginning, which is always the best place to start, I would assume. My mom, 40 female, married my dad 22 years ago when she was 18 years of age. My grandmother was 100% against my mom's marriage, but not because she was so young, oh no. My grandmother was against my mom's marriage because she was, quote, letting the family name down and marrying outside of her race. Yep, you heard that right. My grandmother did not want my mom to marry the man she loved, purely because he was Indian. To be clear, it was not that she was racist against Indian people. No, this woman would have been against anyone who did not have skin color of pure snow. She's a racist, toxic person. What I've never understood is how my grandpa puts up with her. I should probably get that explained at the start. My grandpa is not at all racist against my dad or anyone. He's one of the kindest, sweetest men I've ever met. I once asked him why he was with her, and he smiled gently and said this. Well, honey, sometimes you just gotta live with your mistakes, and no matter what, I got your mom and you from this. I think he was always hoping my grandmother would chill out eventually, but her whole family is the same, so I'm glad he's not holding his breath. Anyways, the wedding went ahead. My grandmother's family are old money, and she refused to pay a penny towards it. My grandpa paid behind her back. He is also from a decently well-off family, but snuck it into my dad's bank account so it looked like his family paid for everything. To be fair, they would have done, but my grandpa is a good man. 2 years later, I was born, and I have been a disappointment to my grandmother from the moment I came screaming into this world. I think she had hoped that her family genes would be strong enough to make me look, less, quote, foreign. But my dad has strong genes, and I'm his spitting image. I have dark skin and eyes, and my hair is dark brown. Personally, I absolutely love it. But my grandmother never wanted to introduce me as her grandchild because of what I look like. When I was tiny, I never really knew that there was an issue, as my mom and dad made sure that I was never put in an awkward situation where it would be obvious that grandmother was ashamed of I. As I grew up, I became really interested in the culture and the way of life my dad and his family had, and we traveled to see them as often as possible. I will never forget the first time I realized that my grandma did not love me. We were in a restaurant sitting down, and my mom had gone to the toilet. I was around 8 years of age, and I was sitting with my grandma when a woman from her church came over to say hello. She looked at me and asked my grandmother, "Oh, who is this beautiful little lady?" My grandmother looked at me and just shrugged. "Ugh, she is my daughter's girl from an Indian." It was at this point that I realized grandmother had to tell her friends I was adopted. She said that my mom had adopted me on her trip to India with her husband, and so I was not my grandma's, quote, real granddaughter. She would die before claiming that I shared bloodlines with her. So that brings us to the present. In my family, it's usual for birthdays to be celebrated by the family. We feel that a person's birthday is an important day to celebrate them and show them how much we value them. It's been a tradition in the family my whole life, and normally we would discuss with the person whose birthday it was what they would like to do, and we arrange it for them. For example, for my mom's birthday this year, we know that she loves flowers, and so my dad arranged for a day out at a flower show with lunch and drinks. It was absolutely lovely. I'm not really bothered about what we did for mine, as I just love the chance to spend the day with family as life is so busy. We don't need to make meetups as often as I would like. When my mom phoned me and asked me to meet her for lunch, I assumed it would be a time for us to talk about my birthday and what we should do. Well, I was partially correct. We discussed my birthday, but not in a way I thought it would go. I arrived first and was happily sipping on my coffee when my mom arrived. I could tell from the look on her face that something was wrong. My mom is one of those people who wears her emotions on her face. Literally, she would be a terrible poker player. I was instantly worried that something had happened to someone in the family. My dad's family live a long ways away, and my grandparents are getting older. As soon as she sat down, she said, "I'm sorry," and started to cry. I was in a total panic mode and thought someone had died. She saw the panic on my face and calmed me down, telling me that it was not someone who was hurt or worse. She then broke the news that my dear grandmother had, yet again, launched a plan to ruin something for me. I got a whole list of things that she's tried to do to me, and I'll probably share them at some point, because, well, they make a crazy reading. This time it was my birthday that she was aiming to ruin. My mom explained that my grandmother had sent her an email that morning with details of a hotel booking and flights to a lovely private island. The flights were booked for the day before my birthday. My mom, being the sweet, innocent woman that she was, had thought that finally, after all this time, my grandmother was doing something nice for me. She was wrong. Oh, so very wrong. My mom emailed my grandmother back and said that it was a wonderful surprise for me for my birthday. She did not get the reply she expected. I've typed out word for word what grandmother replied, as I cannot do justice to her hate in my own words. Here it is. My mom says this: "How wonderful. Hope you will have a fabulous birthday this year. How amazing that you've planned this, grandmother. I assume she'll have an adequate birthday, but it won't be with us. Unfortunately, Opie and your husband did not meet the criteria for this family holiday, and as such, I will not be paying for them to join us. You'll be able to celebrate with your daughter when you get back from our lovely family holiday. As you know, I value our family, and want this to be a lovely break from, them." A break from them? That was how she described me and my dad. I was speechless that she could be so nasty and vindictive. My mom was apologizing over and over again and saying she would not be going, she promised. I didn't know what to say, and I was numb that my own grandmother really hated me so much. My mom and I had that conversation an hour ago, and I'm currently sitting at work trying to wrap my head around it. My grandpa left me a voicemail, but I've not had the energy or inclination to even contact him. I don't want my mom to become an outcast like I am, so I'm thinking of telling her just to go and so we can celebrate when she gets back, rather than risk grandmother cutting her off completely. So, yeah. My racist grandmother deliberately invited all her side of the family on a luxurious holiday on my birthday without me. Ugh, how's your day going? Okay guys, Mr. Edito here. So the grandmother of this story might be in the drawings for one of the most toxic grandmothers on the channel. Don't worry, it's not over there. Multiple updates coming your way, and we're going to start with update 1, when OP finally gets around to contact Grandpa. Well, I contacted Grandpa, and he asked me to go get some coffee with him. I assumed it would be to ask me to play nice and not get angry with grandmother. He spent his whole life keeping the peace, after all. I agreed to meet with him, and we met for lunch today. I'm a little unsure how I feel about things at the moment, but if I write it all down, I guess it's a way to get all my thoughts unjumbled from inside my head. To be fair to my grandpa, he looked genuinely upset about the whole thing. He said that he thought my grandmother had gone too far. You think, Grandpops? And that he was trying to talk to her about adding my dad and I to the booking. I told him he had more of a chance to stop a runaway train, but I guess he could try. I think that Grandpa was confused about just how angry I was deep down. He said that he knew my grandmother could be, quote, difficult, but she just came from a different generation. And they thought differently to my generation, and I actually laughed out loud at that point, which caused a few people in the restaurant to look over at us. I could not believe that he had described her as a bit difficult when she'd been nothing more than cruel my entire existence. This is where I got confused, as he genuinely seemed to not understand what I was talking about. So, I let him know all the things that she's done over my 19 years on this rock. Remember, I said I had stories to tell. Well, I guess this would be a good place to throw a few of those out there, huh? If my grandpa needed an eye-opener, I think it's a good time to put into words the horrible relationship I have with Grandma. Buckle in. This is going to get wild. So, I already talked about the whole, quote, "this is not my real grandchild" conversation that she had with her friend, but that was in no way the end of her nastiness towards me. What confuses me is that my grandpa seems to have been completely unaware of how bad things were. I'm not sure if he just closed his eyes to the truth, or that my grandmother was incredibly good at hiding her true identity from him. He was aware that she did not approve of Dad, and had gone out of her way to try and stop the wedding. My grandpa has a good relationship with Dad, but is limited as Grandma will not allow my dad in her house. When I was around the age of 10, we went to India to visit my side of the family over there of my father, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. My dad's sister was getting married, and I've never seen anything like the celebration for an Indian wedding. To my 10-year-old brain, it was absolutely like a fairy tale. My dad's family welcomed me and my mom as a family, which is how it should be, and I was included in the bride's close female group. I was ecstatic when my dad's mom, we'll call her Nana for clarity, drew beautiful and intricate henna designs on my hands and arms. I felt like a beautiful piece of artwork. All in all, the trip was the starting point with my fascination and love for my father's culture. When we got back, the henna was still on my arms. Although faded, we went to see my grandmother for lunch, and she took one look at me and tutted. She looked at my mom and said, "I see you let her go native. What's next? Will you be marrying her off to one of her own people? Probably for the best." I did not understand what she meant, but basically she was saying that I should be put into an arranged marriage, as due to my mixed heritage, no man would really even choose me. Really, she meant no white man, but she did not say it, as I think she knew my mom would erupt on her. Now I'm older, I know that it was an insult straight to me, but it's not as insulting as she thinks, as I would happily marry a man of any background if I fell in love with him, because unlike her, I'm not a bigot. My grandma never came to any of my school plays, graduations, nothing. She never acknowledged my birthdays, and most years she, quote, forgot where she put my present at Christmas. Or she got me like a cheap notebook and a pen, just to open whilst my cousin opened expensive watches, phones, makeup kits. To be fair to my grandpa, he would slip me some money to my mom to treat me without my grandmother knowing about it. I was never without, as both my parents had good jobs, and I am an only child. My delightful grandmother has tried to sabotage every job I ever had. In school, I had a Saturday job for a local diner. She would leave 1-star reviews on the shifts I worked, saying that I was rude and I should be sacked. She never mentioned my name, but it was obvious that she meant me, as she described me and my skin color, and all the other waitresses were white or Asian. She would come into my work and sit down talking very loudly with her friends about how I was an ungrateful brat who should be happy that my mom chose to bring me up, like she had a choice. I think my grandmother would have been happy if I've been given up for adoption as a baby, and Mom had adopted a lovely little blonde, blue-eyed child. I've long made peace with the fact that I'll never be good enough for grandmother. Anyways, my grandpa was under the impression that he would be able to talk to grandmother into adding me to the holiday, but it was also realistic enough to know that he would just be pushing his luck, and there's no way my dad would be invited. I was upset, and in the end, I just said that it was fine. I would rather not go into the stupid holiday than go and be made fun of and unwelcome the whole time. There was no way that my grandmother would let me have a good time. She would make it very clear that I was ruining the family holiday just by existing. My grandpa told me I was being stubborn, but I'll not go somewhere I'm not welcome. We left it there, and he said he would talk to grandmother. I'm not holding my breath that she's going to change her mind, because if I did, I would die of suffocation before that old witch of a woman allowed me to go. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. So that's the end of Update 1. Update 2 came out almost right after Update 1, so let's go ahead and jump into that. I hope you guys are enjoying this story. Wow, what a crazy grandmother. If you are enjoying it, go ahead and click that subscribe button, as it's the best way to support me, and here is Update number 2. As I thought, my grandmother refused to change the holiday plans to allow me to go. I told myself I did not want to go on her stupid holiday to a posh island anyways, but I was annoyed. I would have loved to spend time with my mom and dad swimming in the ocean and basking in the sun like a turtle. However, I did not want to go without my dad anyways. The holiday had caused arguments between mom and dad. It's awful because they have the happiest marriage of anyone I know. They're so in love. It's frankly sickening. Ha! My mom told my dad that there's no way that she was going without us. My dad said that she had to go or she'd be playing right into my grandmother's plan, and she would be able to see the day. My dad and I were keeping my mom away from her family. My grandmother's already under the impression that because my dad comes from an Indian culture, he'll not allow my mom to do anything without his permission. It's so ridiculous, as my mom does anything she wants. She has a good career, has loads of friends she's always socializing with. My dad's happy for her to do whatever makes her happy. I've tried to stay out of the arguments, but I mainly agree with my dad, as I think my grandmother would blame us if mom doesn't go, and my mom needs to keep the peace with her family. This'll sound bad, but my grandparents are insanely rich, and I would not put it past my grandmother to cut my mom out of the will if she does not do as my grandmother requests 100%. Not that money is the most important thing in the world, but my mom has lived with a mother who has made her life so hard that it would be nice if she at least gets her inheritance entitlement after all that abuse. My mom snapped that she was probably out of the will anyways, but I don't think my grandfather would allow that unless she really annoys Grandma. Anyways, my mom arranged a meeting with Grandpa without my grandmother knowing, and when she came back, she seemed a lot happier. When we asked if everything was sorted, she just smiled and said that she and Grandpa had found an arrangement that she was absolutely happy with. She apologized to Dad and said that he was right. A holiday was just what she needed. Things settled down, and my dad and I accepted that we would not be having a holiday for my birthday on a beautiful private island. My dad said it would be okay, as we could do something fun whilst they were away, and when my mom got back, we would do something else as family. My mom smiled and nodded and went along with this little plan, but at the time, we had no idea what my beautiful, clever mother had set in motion. It turns out the arrangement she had decided with Grandpa would indeed make my mother happy, but it would pretty much send my grandmother into a fit of rage that would last for years. Okay, guys, I can almost guarantee you are not going to expect what's happening in update number 3. This post happens just 2 days before the trip was supposed to happen. Here it is. 2 days before the trip was happening, my grandpa appeared out of our house. This was extremely unusual, as grandmother forbid any of the family from visiting us, in case my dad's culture rubbed off on them. Seriously, she's that awful. When he arrived, he went into my dad's study with him for over an hour. I was sitting in the kitchen with Mom, extremely worried, but my mom just kept saying, "Everything's okay, honey. It's going to be explained later." Finally, they came out of my dad's office and joined us, and my dad was smiling ear to ear. Grandpa looked happier than he'd ever have, or at least in a while. Once we were sat down with coffee and biscuits, my mom and Grandpa explained the quote arrangement that they had made for the holiday. They'd taken my grandmother's plan, hijacked it, and we're all going. Well, all of us except my grandmother anyways. Actually, sorry, that's not exactly true. My grandmother was having the lovely expensive holiday on a private island, but she would be the only one there. For the last week, my mom and Grandpa had searched for the perfect family getaway. Not a word had been said to Grandma, who was blissfully unaware of the changes and was smugfully happy that she'd won, and separating my mom away from me and my dad for the holiday. The hard part was the rest of the family, as my grandpa had wanted to have both of his children with him. My mom had been concerned about that, as her brother had never really supported her in my marriage to my dad, and that they would also either refuse to come or tell grandmother what they planned. So my grandpas reassured her that they would come with them. It turns out that my mom's brother had always been unhappy with the way things were, but as with my mom, he was terrified of upsetting grandmother, who had the money and social connections to make his life very hard, or easy if you look at it in the other way. Also, one of my cousins had recently come out as gay, and there was a very strong chance that one of my grandmothers found out. My cousin would be shunned, just like I was. Being part of the LGBTQ community was bad in my grandmother's eyes, as me being of mixed race. My grandpa had known for months, but as of yet, my grandmother did not know. I asked Grandpa how it would work, as there's no way grandmother would be accepting getting on a plane without the rest of us. She would insist that she's traveled with everyone there. My grandpa laughed and patted me on the shoulder. He said, "Don't ever underestimate the need of your grandmother to be better than everyone else and do things that would make people feel even worse." As they explained, I realized that there was an upside to coming from a family with money. We could arrange things that would not be possible on a low-level budget. I realized that it sounds like I'm boasting about our financial situation, but without it, my grandmother would not get what was coming towards her. I'm going to write the plan down as it happened rather than spoil the fun. I thought it would be much more interesting to give a blow-by-blow account after it all goes down. Update number 4. The night before we travel, I'm sitting in a hotel by the airport with my dad, keeping a low profile because, if my grandmother sees me, she'll realize that something's going on. She might be a horrible person, but she's absolutely not stupid. She went to one of the best universities in the country, even though I don't like to mention it. Talk to her for just 5 minutes and she'll tell you everything you need to know about all the amazing things that she's done in her life. To give you an idea of how out of touch she is, she once said that she did not understand why people complained about how expensive college was. She went for 4 years without getting any debt, so people just needed to work harder or not go. My grandmother has never worked a day in her life, guys. Although I come from a family with money, my parents have always insisted I work, as there's no guarantee in life ever, and they don't want me to grow up to be a spoiled little rich girl. Anyways, I've been kept up to date with how things are going via text message and my grandpa, whom I'm loving more and more every single day, sent me a parcel of food and snacks so I don't need to leave the room to eat. We fly in 6 hours. Well, we do. My grandmother leaves in about 2. I'll be able to come out of hiding at that point. On another exciting note, my dad told me earlier that my family from India will be joining us at the resort, so it'll be a huge family reunion-style holiday. I can't wait to see my nani, aunts, uncles, and cousins. Anyways, this was just a short mini update to say we're at the airport. The next time I write, I'll be basking in the sun with my family, and my grandma will be somewhere else. Probably yelling at some poor worker. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. So, we have one more update to cover, and let me just tell you, this is the update you were waiting on. Let's go ahead and see what's happening with OP. Hey, I'm writing from beside the pool at a beautiful hotel in south of France. Sorry, that feels like boasting, hee hee, but it really is beautiful here. The sun's shining, the food and drinks are amazing, and I'm surrounded by everyone I love. I think it's okay to boast every now and again. So this is what my grandpa planned in its full glorious detail. Weeks ago, when all the shouting had settled about Dad and I not being invited, Grandpa had spoken to my mom to make a peace with her, and explained that he was done with all my grandmother's antics. Now, there's something that I never explained earlier on. My mom pointed it out to me when she read the post, and I've done so far. All the money my grandma relishes in comes from my grandpa. My grandmother, though, was raised in a rich family as well, but her father was a shady businessman and invested all their money in dodgy schemes. Just after grandmother married grandpa, her father was busted by the tax people, and they lost absolutely everything. Grandmother does not tell anyone that, but without my grandpa, she would have been so poor. Anyways, this is just a small point that I thought you guys should know. My mom and grandpa began to put the plan in place, and until it was organized, I had no idea. My dad was in on it as they had decided to include his family in the new holiday as well. My grandpa said that he wanted a holiday with all of us, and he was tired of his wife taking all the joy out of his life with her bitterness and snobbery. It was the snobbery that allowed the plan to work, so I suppose we need to be slightly grateful for that. That evening, my grandpa took my grandmother out to dinner and made a big thing of telling her how stressful it must be having to plan the holiday and deal with the stress of my mom and I being so angry. My grandmother lapped it up as being the snob. She loves to play the victim. She agreed that no one understood how hard her life was, dealing with an ungrateful daughter and a, quote, half-breed. My grandpa said it took every bit of self-control not to just tell her to go to heck at that point. But he thought humiliating her would be worse, as she values how people perceive her more than anyone else. My grandpa gritted his teeth and nodded in agreement. He told her he had a plan to surprise her. He arranged for her to take a private jet to the island all by herself. At first, she was asking why he would not be accompanying her on the jet, but he sold it to her because she would be treated like a queen on the flight and would arrive at the resort a few hours before the rest and would be treated to a full pampering session before the rest of the family arrived, because, well, why not? She deserved it. My grandmother was all for it. All it needed was to be told that she would be treated like a queen, as she thought she was. Once she was happy with the arrangement she heard, my mom and grandpa went into covert mode and booked an entire new holiday without my grandmother knowing. All the flights and bookings for the original holiday remained in place, so that she would never suspect that she would be the only one going, until, well, no one else showed up at the resort. My grandmother got onto the private jet the same morning we were due to fly to France, and my grandpa and mom waved her off from the airport, reassuring her that they would see her in a few hours. Not that my grandmother seemed to care. She boarded the jet like a movie star, waving at her devoted fans with a red carpet entrance. Well, a few hours later, we boarded our commercial flight to France, and my dad's relatives were already on the way to meet us. We wondered how long it would be before my grandmother realized that, Houston, we have a problem. You see, the island we were supposed to be going to was a luxurious, private island, and you flew to the mainland, then chartered a flight to the island which only flew once a week. When she got there, she was stuck for an entire 7 days. I laughed so hard when Grandpa told me that part. We did not hear anything until we were cleared to airport in France, probably because we turned our phones off on airplane mode, and Grandpa ignored all messages until we got to the villa. When we did, it all kicked off. You could hear my grandmother screaming down the phone about how she was stuck on an island with people who did not speak her language. Well, they did, but I think they just didn't want to deal with her drama and pretended they didn't speak English. She hated the food. She said it was all fruit apparently, but we don't believe her. And she wanted my grandpa to send a private jet to get her now, and bring her to wherever the heck he was. At that point, I shouted out loud, "Hey, grandmother!" to let her know I was with Grandpa. Guys, she went absolutely apocalyptic at this point. I'll not repeat the slurs she screamed down the phone line, because I refuse to put that sort of hate into my writing. But let's just say, she insulted not only me and my father, but his entire family in the phone call. My grandpa let her rant and then very calmly said, "There'll be a charter flight in a week. Try and enjoy yourself. Maybe take some time to rethink your personality and how you treat people. We'll be having a few weeks here, so when you get back, I would appreciate it if you would pack some of your things and go to a hotel. John, my grandpa's personal assistant, will help you. And make sure she did not steal anything. He also has some papers for you. Enjoy your holiday, dear. It'll be the last one." When my grandpa hung up the phone, we all stared at him. Was he kicking my grandmother out of the house? Turns out he was. And not only that, but papers. Divorce papers, indeed. He'd finally had enough, and we spent 3 glorious weeks having fun. Playing on the beach, swimming in beautiful blue seas, and my grandpa and I had some really deep conversations, where he apologized for never standing up to Grandma before. He promised me that he would make up for the lost years, and I told him that he did not need to. But I would love to spend more time with him getting to know him better. So that is our messed up family in a nutshell. I had a lovely holiday with my family. My grandpa bonded with my dad's family, and my grandmother lost pretty much everything. Well, you know what they say. Karma is a real... Okay, let's just go ahead and shout out. Guys, I need your help right now. In the comment section down below, I want you to type in some sort of message that has to do with this amazing grandpa. Tell me what you think about him. Hype him up. Drop a comment down below, because without the grandpa of this story, could you just imagine what the grandma would get away with? Grandpa was holding everybody together, the whole family, and I think he made the absolute best decision by cutting her off and playing a little trick on her, stranding her there for 7 whole days. Guys, let me know what you thought about this story. Drop your opinions down below, and if you have any similar situations you would like to share, go for it! Also, click that subscribe button if you want to see more daily videos, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!